Hello everybody, this is the first session of Chinese foreign policy class. It is about September 11th afternoon, so I'm just recording this. Thanks to your own understanding, I just had completed my own journey on my business trip to Taiwan. I just landed Korea last night and a little bit tired, but I'm fine. I'm gonna go for the first class of today. It's recording. The office said that I'm supposed to give you this lecture about 1 hour 15 minutes. So every 1 hour 15 minutes, average 15 minutes, I have to complete the 25 minutes. So 25 minutes, 25 minutes, 25, altogether 1 hour 15 minutes. But I will just complete my portion. I prepared the contents within 150 minutes. I think it's too short. So I tried to explain more detailed story when I just started my lecture. First of all, the title of today's lecture is What Kind of Power Is It, China? What kind of power is it? And then how can we study China? That is two questions. So what kind of power, how can you study China? In order to answer these two questions, I'd like to approach it to China with what kind of power. So we try to identify the China, what kind of power it is. Economic rise, China is, everybody knows that for the previous 30 years, China has grown up as an economic power base. I think they just recorded the fastest the growth rate of the world. So if you take a look at the data in 2011, 2012, 2013, they just recorded 9.3, 7.8, 7.3, 7.7. So it's quite high rate of growth rate. But as time goes by, that growth rate will be declined as time goes by. So last year they just barely meeting 5% of growth rate, and this year they could not make 5%, and even 4 point something they're gonna make. So if we take a look at this data, the China growth rate is real gross domestic products in China from 2014 to 2024. So you can clearly see that its growth rate will be declining. Even though we have fluctuation during the Corona period, so they just minus something, minus of 3%, 4%, and then they go up to 8% of growth rate. It's fluctuating, except if you erase this part, they just consistently slow down this on growth rate. That is the current situation of China. Second is GDP. The overall GDP growth or GDP volume is number 2 in the world. I think in 2024 they recorded number 2, but I'd like to focus on the gaps between United States and China. United States is $29 trillion of GDP volume. China is $18.8 trillion in GDP volume. So China is recorded a little more than half of the United States in GDP growth, GDP volume. So I think I'd like to show you what's the trend. Trend is U.S. growth rate is going up and Chinese growth rate is going up here. But so far, maybe from here to China, the gaps between these two countries' GDP volume would be shrunk a little bit. And at this moment, I think China is slowed down its growth rate, and growth is slowed down. And U.S. is consistent growth. So I think in the future, the gaps between the GDP gaps between United States and China would be wider than before. That is not what we expected before. So I think we have to keep eye on that part. So what will be the comparison of growth rate between United States and China? That is the one point that we have to keep eye on. GDP per capita. GDP per capita would be $13,445, which is 72nd in the world. And number 1 is Singapore, US is number 9, Korea is number 26. So China is recorded as number two country in their population in the world. Number one is India. So their growth, their GDP is quite high, but if it denominated with a large number of population, their GDP per capita would be quite low. But still, this $13,445 is not a bad record. I think China is growing its living standard, and I think China is getting better at this moment. And trade is $6.1 trillion, number two in the world, and export, import, and the trade surplus is $97 billion. That's still very big number of trade surplus. So I think China is maintaining a certain status of economic development. FDI is $144.76 billion, which is in 2024, but that number is decreased sharply, maybe 27.1% of a decrease. Why? Because I think that is because of U.S. decoupling and U.S. economic pressure, and China's reputation is getting worse and worse. So due to those kind of factors, they are not increasing its own FDIs. If we take a look at this data, U.S. will remain richer than China for the years to come. I think the gaps between China and the United States are getting bigger and bigger, and foreign reserve is $3.24 trillion is number one. I think that China wants to take this foreign reserve as a leverage against the United States, but I think it's not an effective way, because once they release or they're selling their national reserve to other countries, the price of foreign reserve, price of dollar would be falling down. So that's not that good to China's national interest. So I don't think China would resolve or would lower down its own national reserve. Exchange rate is $7.18 per 7.18 yuan per dollar. I think it's a decrease than before. So overall, China's economic rise was pretty impressive before, but China's economic rise is slowed down at this moment. So how much they're gonna slow down, it's up in the air. Secondly, China's military rise. China's economic rise will lead China to be a military rise. So if you take a look at this data, the global military spending, I think the military budget terms, I think US is still 37%, and China is 12%, Russia is 5.5%, the rest of the world will be 45.5%. So still, United States is more than one third of the military spending in the world, the US is spending. So in terms of military capability and military preparedness, I think no other country can compete with the United States. China, including China. So China, even though they're spending 12% of their 12% of military budget, I think still not match with the United States. If you take a look at this one, military budget by country, United States is in 2023 they have about $900 billion, and then in 2024 they have $1 trillion, right? It's a huge number of money. They just investing. They want to spending for that one. And if you take a look at China's military budget in 2023, it's barely little more than $300 billion, and then 2024 is a little more than that. But roughly it's about $300 billion. So I think Chinese military budget is 1/3 of the U.S. military budget. So in terms of military capability, I think we cannot say that the more you spend the money, the better your equipment or your preparedness for the military capability. I don't think that exactly that is comparable. But the more you spend, the better you equip. That is to some part that's natural. So in terms of that perspective, I think China they cannot compete with the United States in terms of military budget. Can I use this microphone? That's better. And if you take a look at this part, fast growing. China's military budget is fast growing. If we compare U.S. military budget and China's military budget year by year, in 2012, the U.S. military budget is 682 and China is 166. So 4.1 to 1. But in 2016, 2.8.1, but the 2.8 to 1. That means that China catch up with the United States in military budget, but in 2020 it's a rather wider than before, so 3.1. In 2024, 3.1 to 1. So I think U.S.-China military budget comparison, it's still 1/3 of the military budget of United States. China still record. In terms of military weapons, I think aircraft carrier and this stealth fighter is a very important advancement of military technology. And this one is a military, the aircraft carrier Liaoning. That's the first aircraft carrier in the United States, in China. And they still have, the second in Liaoning and Shandong, and then and they have about three aircraft carriers right now, and they are preparing for a fourth one. But still, if you take a look at the ski jump style, this is a kind of backward style. So I think China, in words, that China has aircraft carrier, but how much function they can do to compete with the United States, still they are far backward. I think China's aircraft carrier is not much functioning, or just like the United States. And China's stealth fighter J-20, they have a stealth fighter, but still not much comparable to the U.S. jet fighters. So in military perspective, military budget oriented and military capability, the weapon capability oriented, I think China is a long way to go to catch up with the United States. And recently, in East Asia, we have many flashpoints. The Korean Peninsula, East China Sea, Senkaku Island, Diaoyidao, and Taiwan Strait issues, South China Sea issues, India-Bhutan border issues. We have many issues. First of all, we have the East China Sea. This is Senkaku Island is right here, right next to Taiwan and closer to China, but Japan is right there. But Japan wants to measure the distance from here. So they still claim that Senkaku Island is Japanese. I think it's historically, and in 1895 when the Sino-Japanese War completed, and China was defeated by Japan. At that time, the Senkaku Island, or this area, was rendered to Japan, and then it's a part of Japanese territory. And after the World War II, the United States, they just occupied Japan, and they just got it, and then they returned that part to Japan. So since then, Japan claimed that, or Japan, they still believe that the Senkaku Island is part of their territory. And China, Japan is still just put under their own sovereignty and their custody, and China is challenged against Japan on Senkaku Island. This is kind of controversial, the theories, and they are still ongoing process. And second is Taiwan, the Taiwan Strait issues. And China wants to repatriate Taiwan someday later. And Taiwan wants to, maybe some DPP, Democratic Progressive Party, currently Lai Ching-te, he is representing too. DPP claims that they want to go for independence. But China is really hate to hear that if Taiwan, they want to declare independence or they want to move for independence, then China, they have right to retaliate or to militarily operate against Taiwan. So in order to just deter the war or the military aggression from China, Taiwan has to abstain itself from the declaring independence. So that is the current snapshot situation. But the Xi Jinping situation is getting worse and worse. And many American people, they just claim that in 2027, Xi Jinping has a high potential to initiate any military operation against Taiwan. I personally, I doubt it, because from Xi Jinping's perspective, right before I mentioned that in terms of military preparation or military budget-wide, military capability-wide, China cannot compete with the United States. If they initiate any military operation against Taiwan, behind Taiwan there is the United States. This is if anything happen in Taiwan Strait, this is not the fighting or not the war between China and Taiwan. This is a war between China and the United States. If we consider this kind of situation, China's Xi Jinping is not easy to decide whether he's gonna initiate any military operation against Taiwan. That's what I'm thinking about. Instead, Xi Jinping he wants to push and kind of a hybrid warfare or cognitive warfare against Taiwan. That's more efficient way. Instead of they just doing their own military operation against Taiwan. So I think Taiwan still we call it as a flashpoint, but at this moment where they're gonna go, is up in the air. Next is South China Sea. So if you take a look at South China Sea, they have 9 knots of operation. This China, they declared that this red line is China claimed territory. If we follow the 9 knots operation, then Chinese claim means that majority of 80% of 90% of South China Sea is territory of China. The rest of the country, Philippines, Brunei, Indonesia, Malaysia, the Vietnam, those countries they are resulting they are covering this area. Those countries they are challenging against China very harshly. But still, China wants to keeping some islands, and then they want to make trouble. If you take a look at this one, and China they want to make they still making some kind of the man-made island. The Iceland is not island. Iceland, they try to pour in some cement and then they have construction. They want to make an artificial island on there. How many islands they have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 artificial islands in here, right? So I think that's going to be a serious challenge against international norm and international regulation. Because in 2013, 2016, an international tributary lawsuit, they did not confirm that China's claim to be this kind of island or 9-dash rule is not accepted by international law. But even though the international lawsuit, they did not confirm that one. China still claimed that this area is their own territory. That's going to be the initial kind of claim, and is the problem of the South China Sea. And borders between India and Pakistan, I think India is one of the big kind of the competitor of China in terms of territorial disputes. So China hates India. That's why China is a good friend of Pakistan, because Pakistan is India's nemesis. So China and Pakistan, they are close friends. They just fight and they just compete with India in terms of 2 territories. Still ongoing process, but they do not want to use military weapons in here. So they just on and often they just have a fist fight between the 2 countries, the military soldiers. Next will be China's diplomatic rise. Diplomatically, China has money, China's military power, China has political power. So they want to raise their own power in international diplomacy. China is in East Asia, they are unique UN members, UN Security Council members. How many UN Security Council members? 5. So China is one of 5 Security Council members. So that's big power. And unique nuclear power in Northeast Asia. That's true. In East Asia, which country can have nuclear capability? Maybe North Korea, but it's not confirmed. It's not much convinced by other countries. I know many people that they recognize that North Korea has nuclear capability, but nobody confirmed, nobody accept that as a nuclear power. So I think it's unconfirmed nuclear power. And China is a responsible great power. I think China is great power. So as a great power, China wants to take a responsibility. What kind of take a responsibility? Chair of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. I think the international institution or international organization will be the main carrier of any country's coalition. So China, not only a member of multiple international organizations, but also China wants to be a creator and manager of those kind of international organizations. That would be one of the example that China is responsible for great power. China also a founder of AIIB, the Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank, in 2015, 16, around that time they just created. I think AIIB is the first non-American country created investment bank in the world. I think most of the majority of international investment bank, U.S. has a majority holding, majority the share, but only AIIB is U.S. is not there. So it's kind of unique one. But China founded, China operated, but other countries, they are just keen eyes on the AIIB's activities, but so far it's not bad. And One Belt, One Road, Community of Common Destiny. I think these two concepts and project was initiated by China. And China wants to make an international infrastructure project of neighboring countries with the One Belt, One Road system. And Community of Common Destiny is they want to make maybe many countries coalition for the same goal of they want to make a common destiny. So Commonwealth, they want to cooperate each other. That's one thing they want to claim. And managing North Korea. North Korea is an international headache. Everybody in the world, they think that North Korea is insane. North Korea is not a good power. But many countries, they have the same headache that how to deal with North Korea. It's not the easy to deal with North Korea. But only one country, China, they can deal with North Korea. So on that perspective, I think China is diplomatic rise and China is diplomatic power. But at the same time, with the China's rise, China wants to claim that they want to replace the United States. Verbally, they do not claim this kind of things. But if we take a look at their behavior, China wants to replace the United States. The world today is again faced with the choice of peace or war, dialogue or confrontation, and win-win outcomes or zero-sum games. China will stand firmly on the right side of history and on the side of human progress, adhere to the path of peaceful development, and join hands with the rest of the world to build a common community with the shared future of humanity. I think that's a very good word. If China follow this kind of words, then the world would be the peaceful and stable the world. I hope that China has to follow. China wants to following its own words. But China economically, militarily, diplomatically, it's rising power. But recently, China's diplomatic isolation is going on. Diplomatic isolation, why that kind of things happen? Because China's reputation is slowing down. China's reputation is not that great. Spread of anti-China sentiment in the globe, that is a common phenomenon. If you take a look at this one, this is the Pew Research data, international opinions of China divided. Maybe Canada, US, Greece, Spain, all the developed countries up until here, median, the Czech Republic, and most of the countries they have unfavorable rates would be higher than favorable rates, except Bulgaria. Yeah, Bulgaria is 20% is unfavorable, 55% would be favorable. But the rest of the countries, maybe Japan and some other countries, except some countries, they are favorable, the ratio is much bigger than unfavorable ratio. But if you take a look at United States, 6%, 26%, and Sweden is 70%, 25%, and then Czech Republic is 57%, 27%, and Japan is 85%, 14%, and Korea is somewhere else. Korea, I don't find it, Korea here. South Korea is 63% and 34%. So majority of the developed countries, they are still recording the unfavorable ratio is bigger than favorable ratio. But underdeveloped countries, those countries, they share the favorable ratio is higher than unfavorable ratio. So I think why this kind of unfavorable sentiment, anti-China sentiment is spread in the world. One is China is unworthy, and China has an anti-spy law and national security law in Hong Kong. Those kind of innovation would be a tarnish Chinese reputation. And China is not a reliable country. We cannot trust China. And the rise of China is fear. Actually, China, maybe their territorial claim, when China was not strong country, they never claimed the territorial claims. But as their power is growing up, China tend to raise its own claim over the territory. I think military expansion, Taiwan contingency, war warrior diplomacy, or also military expansion or territorial claim, all those things would make China lose its own reputation in the world. Another thing is, this is purely United States, they want to claim the origins of coronavirus. It's still not confirmed, but US consistently claim that China is source of coronavirus. But I doubt it. But we have to find out any proof. But there is no proof ever expressed yet. Image of Xi Jinping declined. As I told you that in 2013, I had a meeting with Xi Jinping, and at the time, when I come back to Korea, I claimed that Xi Jinping deserved to be a representative of 1.4 billion people. That's my comment. I claim that, speaking frankly, I thought that Xi Jinping is a really capable leader. Xi Jinping is the leader to deserve to be a leader for 1.4 billion people. But since then, maybe for 12 years, every year, my concept of Xi Jinping has been deteriorated consistently. Why? Whatever Xi Jinping he claims, all the policies, everything is not for China's development, not for China people's commonwealth. This is only one person, Xi Jinping, good, but the rest of the Chinese people, the rest of the Chinese nation, is not that good. I think this is the for 12 years consistent phenomenon. So on that perspective, internationally, many people they try to claim that Xi Jinping is not a good leader. Tarnishing of China's image as a non-democratic society. That's true. Recently, anti-spy law and China's behavior is authoritarian style of leadership that very disappointing people in the world. Visa-free strategy not working. In order to increase the visitors, foreign visitors to China, China claims that they just nullify and then they try to visa-free program to other countries. Maybe Korean people, youngsters, due to its cheap the travel fare, and they tend to go to Shanghai or some other the tiny Chinese cities, but not more than that. Except Korea, the rest of the country they are still slow. So I think China's free visa strategy is not working much. So I think China's diplomatic isolation is still ongoing process. I think that would tarnish the Chinese image in the world, and then China has to deal with a lot of negative perspective of international community. Now we'll talk about what kind of power is China. From U.S. perspective, I think United States they try to claim that China as a strategic competitor. True, they are not getting along each other, and they are strategic competitor. Economic rival. Economically, China is vying with the United States, and U.S. wants to make some gaps, make some widen the gaps from China, but they are doing. But at the same time, necessary partner. On what perspective? Global problem solving, climate change, pandemic responses, and nuclear non-proliferation. On that kind of perspective, United States still need China to help. So necessary partner, ideological challenger, democracy, authoritarianism is very harsh competition or harsh confrontation happen between these two countries. So from U.S. perspective, China is a strategic competitor, economic rival, necessary partner, and ideological challenger. But from Chinese perspective, how they see the United States? United States is a strategic competitor, yes, and economic rival, yes. Necessary partner, I think that's true on a small number of the issues. Ideological challenger. I think both sides they just feel the same way on the other side. Now we're going to have a second set of a lecture, the theoretical perspective on international relations in East Asia. I have no idea, how many students have international relations background, but this is as I claim that this is not a theoretical class. This is more like a policy-oriented class. But in order to understand China and understand the Chinese related affairs, I'd like to touch upon the international relations theories. Here's Amitabh Acharya. He's a theory-oriented person, international relations scholar. He mentioned the IR theory on Asia. We have IR theory like this. IR theory is kind of a certain theory applicable to all the issues in the world. So IR theory they apply to East Asia, but in comparison to IR theory on Western Hemisphere, IR theory applied to East Asia is not much relevant, right? It doesn't match with each other. Why? Because the IR theory was created based on Western Hemisphere culture and literature and everything. So it is supposed to be matched or supposed to apply to East Asia, but once we apply to East Asia, it doesn't make any solid outcome. So Acharya says that IR literature on Asia is atheoretical. Atheoretical is the theory doesn't match, doesn't make any production. So too Western-oriented American social science is too much American social science style, European social science. He just claims that. So how relevant the IR theory is to the study of Asian security? And we have two groups. The David Kahn, Peter Kazenstein, those people, no, IR theory is not much relevant to East Asia's cases. And on the other hand, John Eikenberry, Michael Mastandino, those people, they said, no. IR theory is everywhere. It's relevant to every country. Not only in East Asia, but also in Western Hemisphere, anywhere, it's relevant. They are competing each other. And three major perspectives on Asian IR theory. One, realism, liberalism and constructivism. I like to little bit talking about these issues. Realism is the most common IR theory in international relations. Their basic assumption would be the world is anarchical society. No authority like a government. Do you have any international government? Maybe some people say UN, but UN is not an international government. Why? Because the international government has some kind of sovereignty and they have enforcement power. But do you think UN has enforcement power? If any country violates UN law, and do you think that country will be punished by the collective group of countries? No, not yet. So, I mean, North Korea, they just violated the international law and they just tested the nuclear test for 6 times. But maybe United Nations, they just economic sanction over to North Korea, but not more than that, right? So at this moment, the world, the international community is anarchical society. Nobody can control any one country's behavior. The currently United States is one country, the biggest country in the world. So U.S. might play a policeman in the world. So far, U.S. did, but Trump administration inaugurated. Trump said that we're not going to do any policeman role anymore. So now many countries they want to go for anarchical society. They want to make a survival. States are main actors in international relations, and their common goal, all the countries, their goal is common. Survival, right? We have big country, we have small country. In small country perspective, they want to evade, they want to defend from potential aggression from big countries. If big country invade us, then we cannot survive. So for survive, we have to do something. What do we do something to a small country? First is internal balancing. That is, they have to increase their own capability, military capability, economic capability, and some capability. That's one way. The other one is external balancing. That is, they want to make an alliance with big country. So in Korean case, South Korea, we have alliance relationship with the United States. In facing with North Korea, even though they are weaker in the conventional weapons, they have nuclear power. And they are threatening to use nuclear power against South Korea. In that case, how Korea has to defend ourselves? One thing is take advantage of alliance relationship with the United States. We have to promote our own defense capability. In this case, classical realism and neo-realism. Classical realism is human being is very selfish, and for their survival, they should be brutally. They just disrupt other countries. So I think a struggle for power, that is very important part. Struggle for power. In order to increase their survival level, they want to struggle for power. That's classical realism says that. Neo-realism says that its distribution of power is very important. How we can promote our own stability, I think that in classical realism, how do we promote stability and peace? The way is balance of power. Balance of power is every single country has same maybe. I don't know. Maybe I will just explain that later. Balance of power is the only way to make international stability. But this neo-realism says that bipolarity was stable. Bipolarity, I explained before the US bloc and the Soviet Union bloc, they are competing each other. This kind of two big power, they're competing each other. That kind of structure is bipolarity. Bipolarity is the most stable in international theory sense. And second kind of realism would be offensive realism and defensive realism. Offensive realism is John Mearsheimer is offensive realism, and if any country has a power, increase their capability, it's natural to get dominate or to get hegemony and to get maybe they just will their own power. That's natural. That's an offensive realism. Defensive realism is states are generally satisfied with the status quo if their own security is not challenged. If not any other country will challenge or any other country bother me, then they will just move. If there is no other challenge, then countries they do not want to maximize its own power. That's the defensive realism. Offensive realism, no matter what kind of situation it is, the state they tend to maximize its own power, maximize its own influence. That's natural. By nature, states like this, that's offensive realism. And balance of power is peace when states capacity equals. State A has capacity 50, state B has a capacity 50, state C has a capacity 100. In that case, in order to make a balance of power, state A and state B has to make alliance to challenge against the state C. State C is 100 of the capability of 100. They want to make a state capability of 100. In order to make 100, they want to make alliance. This is balance of power. Regional balancer is maybe U.S. military might be a regional balancer. So far for 50 years, U.S. military stationed in Korea, they just take a role as the regional balancer. So U.S. military is they stationed in Korea. That's why North Korea they are reluctant to invade over to South Korea. China they don't want to bother the Korean Peninsula anymore. But the end of the Cold War in 1991, with the demise of the Soviet Union, so the world, the stability has been shifted from neo-realism to classical realism. Neo-realism that means that bipolarity is a major buttress to maintain stability, right? For most of the Cold War period is bipolarity. So the countries they can make any balance of power, but the neo-realistic bipolarity has been crumbled with the demise of the Soviet Union. The world has been back to classical realism. What is classical realism? Every single country they try to struggle for power. For what? For survival, right? Big countries they tend to invade small countries. I think that recently the Russian invasion of Ukraine is one of the cases. In that case, who can back up? Who can deter those kind of activities? Nobody can do it. Russia, even they invaded Ukraine and they still claiming a lot of things. Now many countries they want to make a mediation to complete the Ukraine war, but it's not easy to convince Russia to step back from Ukraine. And this is a picture of my picture of with the John Mearsheimer. He visited several years ago. He visited Yonsei University. I had a picture with him. I think I like him, even though his argument is quite provocative. But I like him. His idea is pretty clear. And this is Robert Jervis and Jack Snyder. And these two people, they are legendary theorists in international business. Another realism is actually, if we're talking about realism, balance of power theory is the most important. And it's not as important as the balance of power, but power transition theory is recently they just shed light on. Why? Because U.S.-China confrontation, I think the U.S.-China confrontation might be explained by the power transition theory. And their assumption is the world is a hierarchical society. So dominant nation, great powers, middle powers, and small powers. This is a hierarchical society. And this side, the white side is satisfied power, this the gray side would be dissatisfied power. Satisfied power is unsatisfied with the current international order. Maybe developed countries, United States, Western Hemisphere countries, European countries, in East Asia, Korea, Japan, those countries, they are satisfied. Unsatisfied power is underdeveloped countries. And also ex-communist countries, they tend to be underdeveloped countries. They tend to be a dissatisfied power. So dominant nation is the United States. Great powers, which country would be that? Maybe Japan, EU, Russia, China, maybe Brazil or some those kind of countries. Middle powers would be Korea and maybe some Singapore or Southeast Asian countries, some European countries with middle power. Small powers, African countries, some of Southeast Asian countries would be there, right? So in this case, the existing hegemon is the United States, right? And rising challenger is, you can say that China, right? What world is most likely when a dissatisfied challenger increases its strength, achieves parity, and begins to overtake the dominant power. In that case, war has happened. In comparison to the balance of power is if their power composition make a balance, then peace will be installed, right? In politics theory, when world likely dissatisfied challenger increases strength and then their national capability is almost up to par with the existing power, at the time the war has a possibility to occur. It's very interesting. It's very interesting. So in that case, dissatisfied power. If China is satisfying power, do you think they're gonna fight against the United States? No. How they think? Do you think that China is dissatisfied power or satisfied power? Maybe some people they might have some other argument, but from my understanding, China is dissatisfied power. Why? China always believed that, oh, I'm such a capable person. I'm just a growing country, but the countries or rest of the country, they do not respect me much. That's what they believe. So they are dissatisfied power. So they try to increase their own national capability. Their national capability is up to par with the United States. Then the world possibility would be increased. But if we review previously, Chinese economic power, Chinese military power is nothing comparable to the United States. So that's why, if we apply the power transition theory, that's why we are in a state of peace, and we are stable situation. So power transition theory is in reality it's possible. Not theoretically possible, but in reality, I don't think it's possible. Because before China grows its capability and its national images and everything, the U.S. wants to nail down the China. They just put this down. I think many Chinese people believe that Trump policy towards China is pushed down and nailed down, right? Why? Because China is consistently rising up. So in order to deter China's rising, the United States will put it down. That's what many Chinese people they understand. This is AFK Organsky. He's 1958. He just wrote this book. And next is liberalism. Realism is anarchical society. Everybody wants to struggle for power, and then maybe the balance of power would be the best thing they can make a stability. But in liberalism, no. Why? One country they can move along. We have to collectively, we have to cooperate each other. So in that case, limits of intervention of states would be very good. State should not intervene. They just limit their intervention. It's laissez-faire. It's freedom. And then they just let the system flow, right? Let the system flow. So commercial liberalism is economic interdependence. State and state, they try to make economic interdependence. If they just increase economic interdependence, the possibility of peace and stability would be increased. That's a liberalist, they believe. Republican liberalism is democratic peace theory. In many years of review says that states, the democratic states, they tend to not involve into the military tension, or the war not going to happen among democratic countries. Maybe communist country, democratic country, they can cause war, and authoritarian state and communist country, they can cause war, but only democratic country and democratic country, they cannot go to war. Why? Usually democratic country, in order to go for war, they have to get through many steps, right? During the they just get past the steps, they may change their own mind not to go to war. So theoretically, believe it or not, theoretically, democratic peace theory says that democracy and democracy, they do not go to war. Liberal institutionalism is collective security. What is collective security? Maybe UN is collective security. When one country invade the other country, if any one country are invaded by other country, then that kind of behavior is inclusive to many other countries. So if one country invade the other country, the other country's friend, they would fight against the invader consistent. That's collective security. So I think liberalism is collectively, or many countries, they get together, they want to make a coalition, and then they want to behave together. That is a liberalism. In that case, the very important concept of the interdependence, economic interdependence. If any country, the interdependence will be increased, then that country's peace possibility will be increased. And democratic peace theory is democracy don't fight, democratization. If we make a democratization of the global society, then we're going to accomplish international peace. And liberal institution is collective security, collective defense, and collective security, I explained that just like EU, just like UN, and then they just for all community of security. But collective defense is just like the EU. If one country was invaded by other country, among alliance countries, they just believe that if one of the members are inflicted by other countries attack, then that will be shared with other countries. So it's kind of collective security, collective defense. I think democratic peace theory was authored and claimed by Francis Fukuyama. This is Francis Fukuyama, and for about 20 years ago, he just claimed the theory, and it was very much applauded by the international community. This book is The End of History and the Last Man. There is a book acclaimed by international community, and this one is the source of democratic peace theory. And liberalism is, I think, neoliberalism is how institutions affect state behavior. Institution is international organization. For example, institution govern state behavior. For example, if Korea applied to the international NPT, Non-Liberation Treaty. Non-Liberation Treaty, that means that if South Korea has a membership in NPT, then South Korea is committing that we're not going to transfer or we're not going to spread nuclear capability to other countries, right? If Korea violates their commitment, then the rest of the country, they will just collectively, they want to punish the South Korea. That is things. So international community or international organization, if South Korea applied and take membership of many international organizations, then South Korea's behavior would be automatically controlled by the number of international organizations. Why? Because every single international organization, they have their own rules and norms and regulations. So any country who has a membership of that organization has to follow that rules, norms, and regulations. Right? That kind of regulations would govern a country's behavior. So I think neoliberalism says that institution may induce cooperation. Right? If any country take a membership of any organization, that organization induce cooperation. By what? By norms and regulations and rules. I think this is quite a good idea in liberalist perspective. Constructivism is maybe basic assumption of realism and liberalism is national interest is given, right? Any country's national interest would be given. What is national interest? Survival, right? In realist and liberalist assumption is same. What is the state's national interest? Is survival. And never gonna change that. Never gonna shift it. No changes. But constructivism is different. National interest, depending on the environment, can be changed. How? State based on learning. State cannot learn. The people who running the state, they can learn. Right? So strategic learning, cognitive learning, epistemic community, that will be the basic terms. For example, Korea, we did not have any intention or any idea that we're gonna follow the kind of some kind of a nuclear capability. I think the Korea wants to go for international kind of trade. I cannot find out any good example, but learning is very important. Anybody who attend the international conference and then they learn something and they change their own idea and they come back to Korea and then they just disperse those kind of ideas to the other countries, and finally this kind of idea will be influenced over to national interest or national interest decision making, then it will change the state's behavior. It's a long and many multi-steps of a process that we can tell that this constructivism, they want to convince that national interest can be changed, can be shifted based on the environment, based on those kind of perception. How they can change it? Because the people, they can learn something by learning. So that will be the basic idea of constructivism. This is kind of comparison among realism, liberalism, constructivism. If you review that one, it will help understanding your just understanding of internationalist theories. Managing the Rise of Great Power. This is a very old book. It's Lassagian Johnson and Robert Ross, they just edited. In the first article is Randall Shorlo. He's a very well-known constructivist scholar, and he just wrote a piece, and I think this is very important. So his major question is, how has the international system adjusted to the rise of new power? So existing hegemonic perspective, the rising power is coming up. How we can respond to this rising power? How successful have the established great powers been in managing and peacefully assimilating rising dissatisfied challengers into the existing international order? The first goal, the successful of existing power is this rising power, it dissatisfies rising power. how to this country into put into the system existing international order. That is my goal, right? If I do not put this country into international order, then this country might challenge against me, might cause any military operation against me. That's a bad thing to us. So we have to how we can put this country into international order, not to invade me. That is my key concern. So dangers of rising power is temptation to expand. I think that this is more resemble the offensive realism. Naturally, wealthier, more powerful, the rising power is very dangerous. They tend to cause any trouble with existing power, right? That's why rising power is pretty dangerous. Theory of lateral pressure, that is a little small thing. Lateral pressure, that is, in order to survive, they need resources. In order to secure resources, they tend to fight against other countries. I think this is a little weak, a little small argument. Security dilemma. Do you know why is security dilemma? Security dilemma is every single country, they have a misperception of other country. For example, guy number one, A person, is 160 centimeters, 60 kilogram. He wants to improve his own muscles, and almost every day in front of his house, he just weightlifting every morning. But all of a sudden, one of his neighbor recently moved. He's 180 guy, 190, and 100 kilogram guy. He's also weighting his weightlifting. A guy, he watching 190 centimeter guy, huge guy, he's weightlifting. He's concerning that I'm small guy. If this guy he just fight with me, I'm gonna that person. So I need more weapon, right? The next morning he wants to weightlifting. At the same time he has holding some knife over here, right? Just in case he wants to defend himself. And this big guy, he's just weightlifting, and he's just watching the one on the small guy's waist. There's knife. Oh, he has knife. Oh, how can I defend myself? Then I'm gonna holding some more weapons on my body. The next morning, this guy he's weightlifting with a knife. The huge guy he just weightlifting with the guns here. And small guy he watches gun. Then I'm gonna escalate the machine guns. And machine guns, and this guy he's just holding some cannons. Just like the tension escalation. Security dilemma is they cannot trust the counterpart, so they can, to increase their own defense, they want the tension escalating process. That is a security dilemma. Increasing security of A decreases the security of others, right? So security dilemma make everybody unhappy. So how to quench down, how to put down the security dilemma is one of the key concerns that we have to attain. And stage response to rising power. How this existing power perceive rising power's behavior. Based on this kind of perception, the existing power, it tend to choose what kind of response they're gonna go. We have a number of responses. Bypassing distancing. What is bypassing distancing? I don't want to take a responsibility. Even though this country, they are rising power, they are threatening us, I don't care. I want to transfer my own response to the other guys. So not me, don't look at me. I'm not in the position to decide. So bypassing distancing. If many countries do following this bypassing distancing, that will give a rising power a good chance to maximize its own power. So I think from rising power's perspective, they want to see more number of bypassing and distancing. Engagement is the rising power. In face with the rising power, existing power, they want to involve or they want to persuade this rising power to join international institutions. The more number of international institutions that's engaged, or bilateral meeting, bilateral conference, and they want to address this rising power should do something. I think this kind of engagement is very important. Economically engaging, or diplomatically engaging, or military engaging, whatever kind of engaging, they have to contact with the rising power and they have to do influence over the rising power. That's engagement. Binding is to persuade this country to join the more number of international institutions. As I said, every single international institution has its own rules, norms, and regulations. So any rising power, if they take a membership of any institution, then they are supposed to, that country is supposed to follow the norms and regulations of international institutions. So the more number of international institutions this rising power take, the behavior of this rising power will be controlled by this kind of multilateral institutions. So binding is that kind of things. Bandwagoning is rather the countries, they just watching rising power is very daunting and very strongly they just rise up. So they want to tilt it toward the rising power side. And bandwagoning is very often happen in international reality. And balancing and containment is just like balance of power. If any one country is rising up, the rest of the country, they try to make a coalition and they want to challenge against this kind of rising power. That's balancing and containment. Preventive war is rising power in face of rising power. Existing power, they see that, oh, this rising power, they are rising right now. But if, as time goes by, if someday later, if this country has enough to rise, then they will cause a war against me. So preventive war is before this guy rises up to me and then cause any war against me. So I just prepare. I just cause a war beforehand. In that case, as time goes by, the existing power, existing hegemon, is kind of losing their time. As time goes by, rising power is growing up. So as time goes by, it's not that beneficial to me. So this existing power has to decide they're gonna go against the war, against this rising power as soon as possible. Preemptive war is urgent situation. And preventive war is, they have still a certain time here. But preemptive war is, time is too short. This rising power is already up to my nose. Then they are pretty urgent. In that case, preemptive war against the rising power. So what kind of response they're gonna choose, it depends on the behavior of rising power and the international situation. And the existing hegemon situation, and we calculate everything, and then existing power has to decide which way they want to go. And risk propensity, and if you take a look this one, what kind of policy, what kind of attitude they're going to go? It's risk acceptance, risk averse, and nature of revisionist aim and revolutionary. Risk averse is this is kind of a evaluation of the rising power, and this is kind of evaluation of the existing power. Existing power, their character is risk averse. They don't want to go to war. They want to deter the rising power, but they don't want to go to war. Risk acceptance is they are happy to go to war. As far as I just tamed this country, I just deterred this country, I want to go war against it. Nature of revolutionary aim, revisionist aim is, I don't want to, this one, I think this is for rising power. Rising power propensity is risk averse and risk acceptance, and rising power's nature of revisionist aim and revolutionary. Revisionist aim is their request, their rising power, their request to the United States or to the existing power is not to take the number one. They want to increase their own status within the system. But revolutionary is they are not satisfied with this system. They want to change the whole system. So from the existing power's perspective, revolutionary is more threatening, and risk acceptance is more threatening. So the rising power in revolutionary and risk acceptance is preventive war, right? This is the worst case. Any rising power, their nature is risk acceptant, and their goal is they want to revolutionary. They want to surpass the United States. They surpass the existing power. Then the U.S. perspective, their response would be preventive war, and the weakest one, risk averse and the nature of revisionist aim. They want to increase their own status within the system, and they don't want to go to war. It's quite light. They don't want to push much. In that case, engagement, binding, mixed strategy. Everything diplomatic matters. In that case, they don't have to go to war. They don't have to adopt any hardline policies. It's for them just engage and then just binding, and everything diplomatically they try to approach this country. That might be enough. And revolutionary more threatening and risk acceptance more threatening. That is keywords. Any country, the rising power, risk acceptance, but their goal is revisionist aim. They don't want to swept. They don't want to change the whole structure, but they are pretty belligerent. In that case, containment, balancing, engagement through strength. So from the existing power, they want to nail down this country by force, but not much. In this case, their idea is pretty provocative, but they are risk averse. In that case, containment balancing is enough. So this diagram says that what kind of the rising power it is, and how they identify rising power, the easiest power they choose, how they respond to these countries. That is key word of this kind of things. But usually in reality, it's not one policy they adopt. They always has a mixed strategy, engagement and containment. So maybe because that's a limit of single approaches. Single approach only maybe speculate on a small outcome. So we have to approach to mixed strategy and need for combined approach and maintaining political flexibility. With those kind of reasons, we try to approach to the rising power with mixed strategy. And I'd like to briefly talking about how to study China. And we have two approaches to study China. One is IR approaches, the other one is area study approaches. What is IR approaches? We just got through the IR approaches. IR approach is they want to make a theory. Based on the theory, they try to apply to China cases. Their basic assumption is China is one of the country one of the 180 countries. The same. It's nothing differentiated. China is the same with one of the countries in the world. IR theory is like this. So if we have a certain IR theory, we like to apply to China, and we like to apply to China, and then we like to find out what's different from this country, what's similar to this country. We try to compare, and then we can understand China, what kind of country it is. That's IR theory. Area studies is China is unique. We have to understand China. China is unique. Why? Because this is this quality. I think if you take a look at this one, international relations theory there focuses relations among states, international system, general patterns. But area studies said that history, culture, politics of specific region or country. I think area studies approach is China specific. China is unique because its history is like this, its culture is like this, its political system is like this. That is area studies, the supported area studies of major people's the comment. But international relations theorists, the comment would be China is one of the country, and China has share some characteristics of any countries, but China is different from this kind of perspective. Method is theory, model, statistics, game theories, but analysis is language, fieldwork, qualitative, and case studies. So in my case, I studied international relations, but I spent many years in China. So I have both qualities, international relations qualities and administrative qualities. Aim is generalization. They try to apply universal law. China is not unique. China is one of the country. Their perspective is like this. But in area studies, contextualization is a regional specifics. China is unique. China is very characteristic in that perspective. They want to emphasize on that one. Example is power transfer theory, game theory, alliance network. Those kind of things would be the major kind of concept they want to apply to understand China. But Chinese elite politics or Chinese kind of succession stories, those kind of things would be the area studies major goal. Another thing is criminology, pyongnology, Pekingology. Because these are communist countries. Communist countries, they do not share information with other countries. So how can we decipher the black box of Chinese politics or Chinese internal society? How can you get it? By picture, by movie, or those kind of things. We have to find out small things. For example, we just witnessed that any picture of a Chinese leader, but on the desk there's one glass. Then we can speculate that this guy here is quite bad eyes. Like this, we have to find out any little clue to transfer the domestic situation of China, North Korea, and Russia. That is criminology, Pekingology. So we have to adopt this kind of things. We try to increase understanding China, and we have to understand the China, and we have to have a better kind of explain about China. That is what we have to do at this moment. Like this, when Kim Jong-un died, and this is kind of the moving of Kim Jong-un core. At the time, these 8 people, they followed this limousine. Those people were speculated to be national leaders afterward. But in contrast to many people's speculation, Kim Jong-un, he just purged the rest of people completely. It's completely, we never expected. Those kind of things would be one of the things that we just try to explain about the North Korean situation. Xi Jinping, every year Xi Jinping, he wants to make speeches And many people, they want to focus on this kind of pictures behind. What kind of picture he is, what kind of picture he wants to present, and based on that kind of translating what kind of picture it is, and they want to find out what kind of message Xi Jinping wants to deliver to the world. Okay, and this is it. I think we have 1 hour, 20 minutes, 25 minutes. So I think this is it. Maybe due to the time constraint, I cannot explain in detail. But I think if you have any further questions, just let me know. I'll make any skip of classes in the future. But another thing is we have holidays. In holidays, I like to make a session with this kind of recording. So see you next week. Thank you very much.